Hello, One Rental at a Time family. This video is for you. I'm Casey Frankini with Brick by Brick Wealth, and we are here with Anna Kelly, REI mom. And today I want to talk about something that is special to both of us, and that is that we are both mothers, and real estate investing has changed our lives. And so I thought today we could talk about how real estate has changed our lives as mothers and wives and all of that, because it's something that's not talked often about and not talked often enough. So Anna, let's start with you. How has real estate investing changed your life? Maybe let's go back to the very beginning, before you started real estate investing, and what were you kind of hoping that investing in real estate would do for you? And then how has that evolved over time?
Sure. I love this topic, and my brand REI Mom is basically those two things together. REI is really my secondary role to being a mom, and it's what's allowed me to really just have the freedom to be a mother and spend a ton of time with my kids the way I always wanted to. And I'll tell you, when I started investing in real estate, my first property, I bought a little condo. I wasn't even married yet, and I wasn't a mom. So we kind of dabbled. We bought a house speculatively, but I didn't really start really seriously investing in real estate until I was a mom. And in fact, I was on bed rest with my firstborn, who is now 20, and he's actually flying home from college tonight for Thanksgiving. So I'm super excited. But as I was on bed rest with my child, all these HGTV Flip This House shows started coming out. Like that year, that was the year that all of them were starting in 2003. And I just had this thought that, I really would like to be home with my kids. At that time, I was really driven in my career, and my husband had a large six-figure school loan. So I knew I couldn't be home with my baby. But as it was getting closer and closer for him to be born, that tug at like, I want to be home. I don't want to have to go back to work was there. And so, HGTV made it sound much easier than really it is, 20 years ago. But when I had my firstborn, he was a preemie and he was in the NICU for 5 days. And it just broke my heart, Casey, to put him in daycare. And I cried every day. And this, strong career, corporate driven woman was like a blithering mess every day, and I thought, I've got to figure this out. So when Dane was 3 months old, I said to my husband, let's flip a house. And so we flipped our first house when he was 3 months old. He was in the crib in the middle of the dust. It's probably not, great for his health now, but that's really my why, is I wanted to be home with him. And I had a six-figure career. My husband wasn't making nearly as much money coming out of school, and I knew that real estate was going to be hard. It was harder than I thought it would be, but I knew that that was kind of one of the things that we could do to start to replace my income, and really one of the best decisions I ever made. We lost money on the first flip. My husband said, we're not doing it again. I was up for it, but he was not. And so then we started a career. We moved my family from Texas to Pennsylvania and started a practice for my husband, and took on entrepreneurship. And what we did is we bought his property that had tenants with it. It had 4 tenants and 4 garages, and we became landlords. And I thought, okay, real estate is a way now to live below our means, to have some of our expenses covered with rental income. And then we house hacked a 4-unit. So I'm just telling you kind of a few quick things. And that house hack, taking a step back to live below our means, to, understand that if the business didn't go well, or if I lost my job or were laid off, that we would at least have our expenses covered, was kind of that next phase. And at that point, Casey, it was like 70, 80-hour work week. So my poor kids were on my hip and drug up and down stairs and construction sites. And I didn't have the time freedom or financial freedom yet, but that was kind of the beginning of building that hope for me to be home with my kids. And then the great financial crisis happened in 2008, and I lost almost all my 401k. I worked for AIG, which was one of the big companies that had to be bailed out during the great financial crisis. And it wasn't until then, so 10 years from the time I bought my first real estate property to the GFC, where I really had the light bulb that I can't depend on even working for one of the largest companies in the world for my financial freedom. I can't depend on my 401k because it was wiped out. I couldn't depend on entrepreneurship because that was being hit hard. And really, it was this light bulb that my real estate was the only thing that was still doing well. all my tenants were still paying. And that's when I decided to get really serious about real estate and to start buying as much property as I could. And it took 10 years from that point, 10 years. So 20 years from my first real estate property, 10 years from that point of really getting serious about it, because it was the great financial crisis and it was harder to get loans and do all of those things, to be able to retire from my corporate career. But now that I have 5 years later, I have 100% time freedom. I'm completely in control. And when my kids have concerts, when my kids are sick, when they have something they need to do, I don't have to call in and ask, can I come?
Yep.
I control my schedule. And so really, yes, I've created wealth and I've created a really amazing net worth and income from real estate, but it's not really about the money. It's about the fact that now my time is my own and I'm able to spend really quality and quantity time with my kids, that I don't have to worry about, where's that next check going to be? I don't have to show up to work to be paid. Now all the mailbox money just comes in and I get paid whether I go to work or not. And so I can take the opportunity to, take huge vacations. We travel most of the summer. I take off for all of their school functions and activities, and I am fully present with them. And that's what real estate's really done for me that I'm most excited about.
Is amazing. And you probably know this, but this is what every woman, every mom, when they want to get involved with real estate, this is the dream. What you have, this is the dream. And so many people think it's not touchable. It's not going to be for me, everything that you've said has kind of been my journey in a way. I'm not nowhere near where you are in real estate, but my why is very similar. When I graduated college in 2005, I was on the 5-year plan. I was supposed to be a 2004 graduate. I got my first real job, and it was all of 3 months before the company shut down. The owner was into some crazy stuff, and feds came. It was interesting. So it was my eye opener. It was my wake up call. Like, you know what? I don't like driving this hour and a half to work and leaving in the dark and coming home in the dark. And one day I'm going to want to have kids. And I can't imagine working like this for the rest of my life, being gone 40 plus hours a week, 50 hours. I was like, I knew I didn't want to do it. And then when the company shut down, I'm like, I've got to do something now. It's like, this isn't going to be good for me when I get married and when I'm a mom. So I became a real estate agent thinking this is going to be my time freedom, right? I'm going to be able to make my own schedule and do all the things when I'm a mom. This was before the market crash, right, in 2008. And I looked very young then when I was in my 20s. And so it was really hard for me as a listing agent to sell $1 million homes in Orange County, California, because I looked like I was 12, So people didn't want to give me their listings because
What
I
a
looked so
problem to
young.
have, Casey.
I know, but it wasn't good. So I found my niche with investors, and because they didn't care, I would drive all over the place and I would help find them flips. And I realized then the power of investing. I did not think I could be a flipper because I didn't understand creative financing at the time. I didn't know how they had $1 million cash to buy and flip these expensive properties. So that wasn't on my thought process, but me and my dad did get in contract once to flip a house, and we backed out, thank goodness. And this was back then with stated income. I was a server, and they were going to give me a loan for $750,000. I just lied and said whatever I made. I can't believe they were going to give me a loan for that much. But anyways, I'm glad that didn't work out because that could have been a nightmare. But anyway, so then my husband and I started buying rentals when we moved to Memphis. And it was around 2016. We moved to Memphis here in 2013, and I had a 3-week-old and a 2-year-old. And I said, we've got to buy some rental properties. I'm not going to be a realtor again. I hated it. I'm not going to do that. And I'm not going to go get a real job because I don't want my kids in daycare. That's why I moved out here, so I could be a stay-at-home mom and I could be present and take care of them and pick them up from school and go be room mom and do all those things. But I still wanted money. And I watched my parents with their 9-to-5 jobs and the paycheck to paycheck and the not being able to save and always like never quite making it, And I knew that I needed secondary income. I knew we needed more. And I knew that I didn't want to have to go get a day job to make the money. So there must be another way. And I knew rental income was the way to do it. So I kid you not, like we're rehabbing a house. I'm breastfeeding my infant on the floor in the dirty room next door. My other one's asleep in the pack and play in the other room. My husband's ripping out a kitchen and there's power tools. I mean, that was life for a few years, you
Me
know.
too. Me too.
And the kids, didn't go to school, so they had to come with us, and it was after work. When my husband got home from work, we would go on the weekends. We spent our weekends remodeling and rehabbing houses. And it's like, we only have 8 single families now because this was all on a single income under 6 figures this whole time. And I didn't start making extra money until I started my coaching program, about 3 years ago. Otherwise, we were a single income household for almost 10 years, So it was a lot of sacrificing, but that's what we needed to do to get to where we are. Now my husband can quit if he wants. He loves his job. He works with his best friend, but there's no pressure.
Right.
If he gets fired, if he gets laid off, he's not going to get another job. That's it. He's done. And if he quits, oh well, cool. We've got rental income.
Yes.
And I'm able to live my life I want. I could have never started my coaching business if I didn't have rentals to rely on. It would have been too
Right.
much of a risk. It would have been too
Right.
risky. So rental properties have allowed me the freedom to spend my time how I want and to take, to take vacations when I want. I don't have to ask people for time off, which is really amazing. And I can pick up my kids from school and I can go to all their field trips and I can do all the things, all because of real estate. And, I make it, I manage them myself. So that's kind of my job. I'm the
Yeah.
property manager. I help bring in the income. I do the showings. I schedule the rehab and all that. And it's fun and it's in line with my passion. And it's provided just such stability for my family. I mean, I remember in 2008 when I worked part-time in California at the time while I was a real estate agent, there was a lady in my office and I probably told the story already on Zuber's channel, but she was about to retire and she only had a couple years left. Stock market crashed. She lost all her 401k. She's crying at her
Mhm.
desk and she's like, I'm going to have to work 5 more years. And I'm like, okay, well, there's a sign that I cannot put all my eggs into that basket of 401k.
Mm.
And we can do 401k and we do. Blake does his 401k, but rental properties is stable, in my opinion. It's the most safest investment, investing that you can do.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love hearing your story. It's so similar to mine, because a lot of times people think I can't get started in real estate because I don't have any money. And the reality is, if you have a lot of money, you could get started really fast investing with people that have time. When we started out, we didn't have any money, just like you. And so when you don't have money, you have to learn and you have to invest the time. And yes, it's hard to do it when you have kids, but it's so worth it because it pays off. And when they're little, it looking back, it's going to sound crazy to new moms, but looking back, it's like kids are really resilient, right? Like it's okay if they cry a few minutes while you're still painting and, you give them a bottle and a toy and they're in their back and play, like they'll live, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we had so many of those, sleepless nights and just, hard. It was hard, but life is hard. And so you choose your heart. And one thing that I knew, I grew up in apartments. And so I never really had this, like, I need to be wealthy and I'm going to become wealthy on real estate. It was always that mindset that real estate gives some passive income. And initially it isn't passive. I mean, to be fair, if you don't have money to start out with, oftentimes it is active. You're doing every role that, you can within your business as you learn to save some of that money, but it can be really passive for people if they prefer not to do it that way as well, hiring, contractors, hiring property managers, whatnot. But really those early years of sacrificing, the key about real estate is it really snowballs over time. And so in the beginning, it might just be, $200 or $300 a month per unit that you're bringing in. And it doesn't seem like very much. And it doesn't seem like you're going to get there. But if you get 2 units, now you've got $2,000 or $3,000 a month. I mean, 10 units, and then you got 100 units, and you've got, $20,000 or $30,000 a month, and it's going to vary, across the country, et cetera. But it's like once you get that thing going in that machine, and you're just going and going and going, you do get to a place where you can say, if I don't want to work anymore, like the kids go in phases too, right? It's hard in the early years and then it's a little easier. Well, wait till they all get in sports and school and, you're driving, you're splitting your time because for us, we had 4 kids. So I started with one and, ended up having 4 kids while we were doing this journey. And there were a lot of sleepless nights and a lot of sacrifices, living below our means. We rented property to live in while we bought rental properties. Instead of buying the big house that we wanted, we rented a house for a while after we outgrew our house hacks because we had, more children. But that living below our means and just understanding that it's a long game and sometimes it's going to take longer than others depending on the economy. But if you're just consistent, eventually it really does become really passive, especially if you rehab your properties really well early on and you have good tenants. Now we self-manage some. We have locally about 300 units. And so we self-manage about 60 of them. And then we have property managers for about 240, and every market's a little different, why that may or may not make sense. But it's amazing how that those sacrifices in the early years really allow you, when your kids really want to spend time with you, especially those, elementary and middle school ages, like that's the years that if you can start when you're young, or I love you said before you have the kids, like by the time they are in all of the activities, whether it be, music or drama or sports or whatever it is, you can be there and not have to miss their stuff because you don't have to answer to anybody. And, we also were kind of on one income because although my husband had a business, all of the money that he made in the business went back into paying off all the business loans that we went into pre-great financial crisis and keeping his staff employed. And so we did it on one income, my income. And thankfully my mother-in-law watched my kids. So that made it, easier for me to see them without daycare. But it's really about that time freedom and making small investments early on so that as your kids get older, you can be more and more present and say, even if it's, I can only take, I'm going to move from a 40-hour a week job to a 35-hour a week job or a 30, every little bit that you can work less to be fully present with your kids. As a mom, there is nothing more valuable than that. And as a mom who now has one in college, the one that got me started and one that's a senior in high school, I'm so, so thankful, today looking back, for all of the hard work and time that's allowed me to really have this time now. Whereas my kids are in middle school and high school, I don't miss anything. I'm there when they need me. And I work a whole lot less now than I did in those early years, because again, once you build that portfolio, the money comes while you sleep. So it's an amazing blessing. And the best thing I ever did as a mom for my family and for my kids was to build that extra income, truly one rental at a time.
You are an inspiration, Anna, seriously. And I hope that a lot of moms that are watching this are really taking it in. And if anyone that's watching hasn't gotten started in real estate, you can do it no matter the phase. You don't have to start before you have kids. Just get started, because if there's one theme I'm constantly hearing from investors of every age, it's always, I wish I had started earlier. I wish I had started yesterday. I wish I had bought back then. No one's ever saying, I'm sure glad I started now and not then. So just get going, because nothing's going to happen if you don't start. So Anna, thank you so much. Tell everyone where they can find you.
Right. You can find me here weekly. You can find me on social media at Anna Kelly, REI Mom. And for real estate coaching, consulting, and deal review, you can find me at AnnaKellyInvesting.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Coming to